My name is Dr. Megan Hartwell, and I was told not to come home for Christmas. The phone call came 3 days before the holiday. I had just returned from a long shift at the hospital, worn out but still smiling as I looked at the packed bag waiting by my door. I had already bought gifts for everyone, including the rosemary and stuffing ingredients they requested every year, even though they never remembered that I was the one who always made it. I had even picked out a new sweater. Forest green, soft, simple and festive without trying too hard. Just enough. When my phone vibrated and I saw my younger brother Evan's name, I assumed he was calling to ask if I could bring extra napkins or help coordinate rides, the way he did every year. Instead, he explained that Lydia would be coming to Christmas. He said she cared a lot about energy and how a room felt. Then he added that because of my work, things could sometimes feel heavy, and for her sake it might be better if I skipped this year. He said it was nothing personal. I did not argue. I did not ask him to explain what he meant by heavy. He did not say that I was a geriatric doctor who helped people die with dignity. He just said heavy, as if I were something damp and inconvenient in the background of his carefully curated life. About an hour later, my mother called. Her voice was gentle, almost soothing, the kind that hid something sharper underneath. She said they were only trying to make things easier for everyone. She reminded me how sensitive Lydia was and said that if I came, it could create confusion. She added that they might not even answer the door. That was when I understood. I was not simply uninvited. I was unwanted. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I said that I understood, ended the call and opened my banking app. The mortgage payment was canceled. The car loan top-up was frozen. The emergency maintenance fund was locked. I stopped being their quiet support system. There was no announcement, no message, no explanation. Just silence. And for the first time, that silence belonged to me. I used to believe the way my family treated me was normal. I told myself that I was just too serious, too focused, too much. I was the oldest child, the trial run, as my father once joked at a barbecue before handing Evan the larger slice of cake. Evan was the golden boy. Creative, charming, the miracle baby who arrived after years of trying. I was simply first. When Evan was 6 years old, he covered the living room walls with permanent marker. My parents called it expressive. When I broke a bowl while setting the table, I was called careless and told to pay more attention. Evan once came home with a participation ribbon, and it stayed on the refrigerator for a full week. I brought home straight A's, and they said that was nice before sliding the report card into a drawer. One time, I left my perfect grade point average letter on the kitchen counter, hoping someone would notice. No one did. When I was accepted into medical school on the first attempt, with no gap year and no second tries, I printed the letter and showed it to my mother. She said it sounded intense and warned me to be careful not to burn out. When Evan dropped out of college for the third time to pursue creative direction, they threw him a re-entry party. There were balloons, cake, and a framed photo of him holding a paintbrush that still hangs in the hallway as if he had cured cancer. They always said he was artistic and that he felt things deeply. Once I found my sketchbook in the recycling bin under grocery flyers. When I asked about it, they said they thought it was scrap paper. I kept going anyway. I worked hard. I graduated early. I got licensed. I began treating elderly patients, people who had been dismissed, forgotten, and left to decline alone. I gave them my time, my energy, and my full attention. At home I gave just as quietly. I fixed plumbing issues. I paid off a lingering home repair bill without being asked. I lent Evan money when his freelance work collapsed and never asked for it back. I never even brought it up. None of it mattered because in my family's eyes, Evan was the star. And I, despite everything, was just the one who always showed up on time and did not complain until the day I stopped. There is a particular kind of pain that comes from being relied on but never truly seen. That was me, the fixer, the helper, the one who quietly paid for a new water heater when theirs failed in February. The one who noticed the overdraft on my parents' account and transferred money before they realized it. The one who booked Evan's flight home for Thanksgiving last year when he said he was short on cash after buying new camera equipment. And I never said no. Not once. Not when my mother needed help with physical therapy co-payments. Not when Evan called from the side of the road because his car battery had died again. I replaced it that same week. I was useful and I believed that meant I was valued. But I began to see the pattern clearly. My contributions disappeared the moment they stopped. They forgot who had helped, but they remembered who had made things uncomfortable. When I was present, I was too quiet, too serious, too intense. When I was absent, everything felt lighter, easier, more enjoyable. Still, I continued helping, telling myself it was love or obligation or perhaps nothing more than habit. But that night, after they told me not to come for Christmas, something inside me changed. It was not anger. It was clarity. I opened my banking app and stopped each recurring transfer. The $800 monthly mortgage top-up was gone. The rainy day account I kept for family emergencies was locked. The $1,200 Evan still owed me was written off. I knew I would never see it again, but I was not going to let another dollar reach him. They would not notice immediately. That is how it works when you are quietly useful. The absence is only felt once the support is gone. I did not announce what I had done. I did not post a passive-aggressive quote online. I did not even tell my friends. I simply allowed the silence to exist. For the first time, that silence felt calm. Christmas passed. I spent it alone in my apartment with a mug of hot tea and a blanket that still carried a faint scent of rosemary and fabric softener. I did not open the presents I had wrapped. I did not turn on the tree. I did not cry. I just sat there. There was a strange strength in not showing up where I was not wanted. The day after Christmas, my phone started buzzing. Not once but 3 times. I ignored the first calls. Then a message came through from my mother, telling me to answer and accusing me of causing enough damage already. My stomach dropped. A moment later, my phone rang again, this time with my aunt's name on the screen. She was my father's sister, the only one who still sent birthday cards with handwritten notes. I answered. She asked quietly what had happened the day before. She said they were claiming I had ruined Christmas, even though I had not been there. I was stunned. Ruined it. She hesitated and then said something had happened with Evan's girlfriend, Lydia. Lydia had left early. There had been shouting. Then my name came up. That was all she knew, but it explained enough. Later that evening, my aunt called again. She had learned more. Lydia had seen a photograph of me in the living room, an old one from years ago. She recognized me. She had said that I was the doctor who saved her grandmother. She had said my name out loud. According to my aunt, the room went silent. What happened next was unclear. Lydia had asked if I was the sister they talked about, and whatever they told her made her quietly gather her things and leave. I did not need details. I could imagine it easily. They likely joked the way they always did. That I lived at the hospital. That I made everything too serious. That I was difficult to love. Maybe they repeated the line Evan once used, saying I was basically death in a pantsuit. None of that was new. What was new was that someone else had been listening. Someone who had not grown up thinking cruelty was normal family behavior. Someone who remembered the doctor who stayed with her grandmother when others gave up. Someone who saw me without being told how to see me first. That was how I ruined Christmas. By not being there to protect the illusion. By not smiling politely while they reduced me to a joke. By being remembered for the good I had done for someone who was not them. 2 days later, my mother called. She did not greet me. She immediately accused me of saying something to Lydia and told me Evan was falling apart. Lydia had blocked his number. She would not speak to him. She had posted something online about being mistreated by the family of a woman she admired. I could hear glass clinking in the background, likely from the kitchen. She said Lydia had tagged my photo, as if I had committed an offense. I said nothing. I let her continue until she finally asked me to fix it. She wanted me to contact Lydia and explain that there had been no bad intent, that everything was misunderstood. I was being asked to manage damage for the same people who had excluded me. She said Lydia was ruining Evan's future. His name, she claimed, was being dragged through art circles in New York. He was being blacklisted. I almost laughed, not out of humor but disbelief. They had spent years making me invisible, and now the consequences of that invisibility were affecting something they cared about. I told her I would think about it. I did not. Instead, I opened Lydia's post. It was not angry. It was not dramatic. It was honest. She wrote about the doctor who had cared for her grandmother. She wrote about walking into a family gathering and hearing people mock that same woman. She said she was shocked that someone so kind could be spoken about that way by her own family. She did not name anyone. She did not need to. One line stayed with me. She wrote that some people hide cruelty behind polite smiles and holiday decorations, but seeing that photo reminded her what real kindness looks like. And it was not sitting at that table. The post spread quickly in her circles. People shared it, commented, and added their own thoughts. For the first time, no one described me as difficult or heavy. They said I mattered. That night, just before I went to sleep, my phone buzzed again. It was a voicemail. Not from my mother. Not from Evan. Not from my father. It was from Lydia. Her voice sounded different from the polished version Evan had shown me weeks earlier. It was quieter, less rehearsed. She apologized for reaching out and said she had gotten my number from my aunt. She paused several times. She said she had not really known who I was, but she recognized my photo. I had treated her grandmother years ago. Her grandmother still talked about me. She said I had changed everything, that I had stayed when others did not, that I had been kind and present and made her feel like she mattered. Her voice broke slightly when she apologized for what had been said about me. She said she could not sit there and pretend, so she left. I listened to the message more than once. Then again. And then I cried, not out of sadness, but because someone had finally seen me clearly. Not through family roles or long-held dismissals. Not as too serious or too intense. Not as someone standing in the background. Just as myself. Lydia did not ask for anything. She did not try to fix what she had not caused. She simply acknowledged the truth. And that recognition did more to heal me than years of empty apologies ever could. 3 days later, a small package arrived in my mailbox. Inside was a handwritten letter on thick paper, the ink slightly smudged at the corners. Lydia wrote about her grandmother in more detail. She said her grandmother still practiced yoga twice a week, still walked to the farmer's market, and still told the story of the young doctor who had looked her directly in the eye and told her clearly that she was not finished yet. Lydia thanked me not only for saving a life, but for showing her what real strength looked like. I framed the letter and hung it beside my desk, the same desk where I completed patient notes every evening. For the first time in years, I did not feel the need to prove myself. Not to my family, and not to anyone else. Just when it felt like things had finally settled, my inbox filled with a new message. The subject line read that they wanted to reset things. The email was signed by all three of them, my mother, my father, and Evan. It read like a coordinated effort, as if they had worked on it together. The tone was exactly what I expected from people who treated apologies like transactions. They did not say they were sorry. Instead, they wrote that emotions had been high and that they regretted how things may have been perceived, which translated to them believing they were right but fearing the outcome. They suggested a family brunch in neutral territory, and called it an open and honest discussion. In the fourth paragraph, they finally revealed the real purpose. They said they would appreciate it if I reached out to Lydia and asked her to remove her post. That was the reason for the sudden attempt at reconciliation. It was not about healing. It was a negotiation. They wanted Evan's reputation repaired in the art circles Lydia moved in. They wanted me to clean up what they had caused. I did not reply. The next morning, things escalated. My father contacted one of the hospital administrators, someone he had met once at a charity event, and claimed that I had been acting emotionally unstable. He said he was worried about my well-being. He tried to undermine my professional credibility. The administrator called me immediately, apologized, and assured me there was nothing to worry about. That attempt failed. Then came a group message sent to extended family. It was filled with careful half-truths. There was no mention of me being excluded from Christmas. No mention of the comments made about me. Instead, it focused on claims that I was tearing the family apart, and that they were deeply concerned about my mental state. 2 cousins I had not heard from in years reached out. One even offered me a yoga retreat voucher, suggesting it might help if I was struggling. Finally came the last and most desperate attempt. A visit. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents and Evan standing there. I opened the door and leaned against the frame with my arms crossed. My mother said calmly that they only wanted to talk. I stayed where I was because by then I understood something clearly. They were not there for me. They were there for the version of me who fixed their problems and absorbed the damage. That version no longer lived there. They stood in silence for a moment, waiting, hoping I would give in like I always had, invite them inside and make it easy again. I did not. After a pause, I told them that I was not going to do that. I did not raise my voice. I did not explain. I simply said no and closed the door. I did not feel guilty. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea, sat at my desk, and looked at Lydia's letter in its simple wooden frame. It reminded me that the most meaningful recognition often comes from people who gain nothing from giving it, people who truly see you because they are paying attention. I thought about the years I spent trying to earn the approval of a family that only valued me when I supported the image they wanted to believe in. The golden child. The artist. The version of success that made them comfortable. But I was never meant to exist for their comfort. I was meant to heal, to sit with people at the edge of goodbye, and to listen when others turned away. In doing that, I had made a real difference. I did not save lives to be praised. I did not stop payments out of revenge. I did not walk away to prove a point. I walked away because I finally understood the truth. Once you see it clearly, you cannot ignore it. There is strength in silence and in refusing to explain yourself to people who are determined not to understand you. There is power in setting boundaries and keeping them. Your worth does not require agreement from your family to exist. As I finished my patient notes that night, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. I felt calm. And to anyone who has been made to feel like they are too much, too serious, or too inconvenient, hear this clearly. You were never the problem. You never needed to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's narrative. You are allowed to create your own. If this story connected with you, if you have ever felt unseen by the people who should have noticed you most, consider sharing your thoughts or passing it along. Some of the quietest stories carry the strongest truths, and sometimes choosing not to show up is the most powerful decision you can make.